In these last few days, there has been a mysterious fog across the majority of the US and Europe. Thousands of people reported that the fog smells bad and raised their concerns that it might be poisonous. Of course, most people insulted them in the comments claiming they are conspiracy nuts. But I'll tell you what, the conspiracy nuts turned out to be right. Because right now, I'll prove that the fog is poisonous. 10 days before the fog emerged in all these places, this many volcanoes showed 2 times higher levels of activity than usual. And usually, at any given moment, the average number of active volcanoes worldwide is around 20. Right now, there are 44 continuing eruptions. And many people claim that the Smithsonian Institute changed its narrative to say this is normal. They used to demonstrate on their site 20 volcanoes is the average, and now they were claiming it's 40. At least this is what I read in conspiracy subreddits, and I'm gonna check it in a bit later. You might ask, what do volcanoes have to do with our fog? Well, let me tell you about the Great London Smog of 1952, when thousands died in what appeared to be a very smelly fog. It turned out that a poisonous gas, sulfur dioxide, was trapped in that fog. It sickened over 100,000 people and thousands died. The same thing has happened in the US as well. In 1948 in Pennsylvania, a fog of sulfur dioxide poisoned the people of the Nora. And guess what volcanoes release in massive quantities when they erupt? They release sulfur dioxide among other poisons. Some conspiracy theorists believe that back then someone leaked the sulfur dioxide to test it as a bioweapon into the fog. I won't dig deep into that and unravel this because regardless of what happened, it got 100,000 sick. Now here is where things get interesting. All these erupting volcanoes, they're nowhere near Europe or the United States where the fog is. The volcanoes are in Indonesia, South America, Iceland and Japan. The volcanic activity itself is natural. It matches patterns we see with solar and tectonic activity. It's just extremely high. Yet, looking at the atmospheric data, the sulfur dioxide levels in our current fog are already concerning. The wind has carried the sulfur dioxide from the volcanoes to Europe and the US, and it's already mixing with the fog. Those people who reported strange smells weren't imagining things. The chemical evidence backs them up. When I tested a fog sample under my microscope in my last video, it looked normal because sulfur dioxide is invisible to basic microscopes. But the air quality maps and sulfur dioxide readings revealed the truth. The fog is poisonous. So why isn't mainstream media reporting this as a threat? Why aren't they informing people that the fog is covering way more territory than normal and that at the same time, it's poisonous? Why do you have to learn this from a YouTuber? Weren't they so concerned about your health 4 years ago when they made you stay at home? Keep in mind that volcanoes poisoning the fog are very far away from us. Imagine what would have happened if the volcanoes erupted in Europe or the US during this fog. Well, I have some very bad news for you. Tectonic data shows 2 massive underwater volcanoes are about to wake up, and these are right outside the US and Europe. The first one is called Axial Seamount, and it sits just 300 miles off the coast of Oregon. When it erupts, it could surely trigger a tsunami, but that's not the worst part. If this fog is still around when that happens, the entire east coast will be exposed to dangerous levels of sulfur dioxide. So if you live near Oregon, Washington, or California, I would closely monitor the Axial Seamount's volcanic activity if I were you. In Europe, we're not safe here either. Just off the coast of Santorini in Greece, there's another underwater volcano that is showing signs of awakening. The last time it erupted was in 1649, and then it wiped out an entire city. And now, in combination with the fog, it's threatening to do much worse. It surely looks like a great time to poison everyone for very cheap if you could just manufacture an artificial fog, because the sulfur dioxide is there in the atmosphere waiting to be trapped in something like a bioweapon. That is, especially if you knew about the 2 underwater volcanoes near the US and Europe. It seems like a very good time to attack these two parts of the world with fog. And don't tell me that this is absolutely crazy, because in the previous video, we proved devices that can make artificial fog already exist, so there's a possibility this fog is artificial for whatever reason. The only thing that we couldn't figure out completely so far is why the satellites aren't detecting the fog in some places where you have been reporting fog in the comments. But hopefully when these volcanoes erupt, there will be no fog anymore, because if there is, it will sicken the entire east coast of the United States. If I were an evil genius, I would time the creation of the artificial fog and use this natural disaster. Although I'm pretty sure the volcanic eruptions are natural, they often coincide with solar activity and tectonic activity, and right now, based on that, the volcanoes erupting make total sense. Looking at solar activity and tectonics, it's all natural. There are very strong solar flares coming at us right now, and they are sometimes coincidental with the eruptions. There isn't a strict correlation between volcanic activity and solar flares, but many people speculate they are connected, so you get my point. I also saw that many people pointed out that Smithsonian is changing its standards for volcanic activity. To be unbiased here, the Smithsonian didn't change its standards. They just rewrote the sentence in a manner that it appears more normal to have 44 simultaneous eruptions. I don't know the reason. Perhaps they are hiding something, or perhaps they know something we don't, or maybe they just refresh the content of their website. Now, none of this matters, but remember, in the last video I took a sample from the fog. I looked the sample under a microscope and it turned out fine. Well, if it had sulfur dioxide in it, which after looking at the sulfur dioxide map, we know it had. I wouldn't have seen it anyway, because of the limited capabilities of my microscope. The air quality maps and the sulfur dioxide maps are enough to prove the fog is poisonous, and that the people who said it smells weird are correct. The good thing is it's not as deadly yet. It does not contain any radiation particles, it seems. Europe shows normal levels of gamma radiation all over. So the only concern we have is for our lungs. I'd like to urge you, however, if there's still fog outside, limit your time outside until the fog disappears. I believe this sums up the poisonous fog so far, and I think it concludes my investigation. Let me know in the comments if you found something that I didn't. And I want to tell everyone, please pay attention to the conspiracy guys. It turns out sometimes they are right, no matter how crazy it sounds in your mind. So open your perspective a bit. If you haven't checked the first part of this series, check it here. If you have, jump onto my next video here. I'm Xuisoko, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.